Does your dirt bike not want to stay running or idling? This is super frustrating because you just want to go out and ride and you have to keep giving it gas to make it idle, or maybe it won't even run well at all. I've had to troubleshoot dozens and dozens of 2- and 4-stroke dirt bikes over the years, so I want to share 14 of the most common problems that cause your bike to not stay running and how to fix it so that it stays idling. And if you stay till the end, I'll give you 2 pro tips that'll make this easier and less confusing. We'll start with the easy things. Number 1, is the fuel on? Do you actually have fuel in the tank? That could actually be number 2. But number 2 is the choke on? The choke is there for a reason, to make it easier to start and stay running when the engine is cold and still warming up. Number 3, is the idle set too low? If this has been a problem for a long time, or maybe the temperature changes a lot and it runs fine but just doesn't want to idle, well, if you just turn the idle screw in a little bit, bring that RPM up so it's not just to a consistent RPM, that might fix your problem. Problem number 4 is the engine isn't warm, or you didn't leave the choke on long enough. When an engine is cold or partially warmed up, it doesn't have the same air fuel mixture, so it can't burn the gas and oxygen efficiently, meaning that it might not idle. Once the internal engine parts fully expand and start burning that fuel efficiently, that is when it's going to have a consistent running RPM. Number 5 is the air or fuel screw is not properly adjusted. It's a fine-tuning adjustment of the pilot jet, which controls 0 to quarter turn throttle position, which is your idle speed. And if you want to learn how to adjust your air or fuel screw in just a few minutes, I got a free guide. It's a PDF. You can grab it in the description below. Number 6 is the pilot jet is too big or too small. If you twist the throttle and it revs up and it takes a while to settle back down and then it dies, so that's a good sign that it's too lean. But if your bike doesn't want to idle when it's hot, or it gets worse as the engine gets hotter or the temperature gets hotter, that's a good sign that the pilot jet is too rich. Problem number 7 is the pilot jet is dirty. This can be caused from your bike sitting for months or years at a time, or using bad gas, especially if it has ethanol in it, because it attracts water, which causes it to break down and gum up the jets. Not only will it not idle well, but it'll be really hard to start when the engine is cold because it's running too lean. Not enough fuel is getting sucked up into the engine. Problem number 8 is if the air filter is dirty. This is when there's so much dirt and debris covering the air filter that not enough air is getting into the carb, into the engine. So the mixture is going to be running way too rich, and it's not going to idle very well or at all. Problem number 9 that it's not idling is if the fuel filter is clogged or the fuel line is kinked and the carb is not getting enough gas. So a good way to check is to drain the float bowl with the petcock turned on, or maybe just pull the fuel hose off and make sure fuel is coming out of it. Problem number 10 is the float level might be too low or too high, causing all of the jet circuits to be too rich or too lean, and it's not going to want to idle. Problem number 11 is an air leak. This will cause a hanging idle, an inconsistent idle, or just won't want to idle at all because there's too much air getting sucked in, whether it's around the carb or the intake. And if you do have a hanging idle, I got a video on that up here. Problem number 12 is the reeds are worn out, and this is pretty much only 2-stroke because not many 4-strokes have reeds. But if the reeds are worn, if they're loose, you can see light through them when you pull them off, or they're chipped around the edges, it's not properly sealing the air and fuel mixture, causing it to run rich. It's not super common, but if you checked everything else, good idea to check that. Problem number 13 is if the carb is internally worn out or broken. For example, like a Key and FCR pumper carb, they have mid-body gaskets that wear out or gum up, especially from bad gas or carb cleaner, which can close the tiny jet circuits and passages, causing it to not run very well or not idle. Problem number 14 is a bad stator or CDI. So if it's not creating a good enough spark, then it's not going to want to idle, and it may even be low on power. So if you checked everything else, then it might be an electrical problem. Now for those 2 pro tips to make it easier and less confusing, one is start with the easiest things first. Go to the top of my list at the beginning, go through those. Don't just jump to the hardest thing first because that's what you think it is. It might be, but you might waste a lot of time finding out that it was no problem at all. Tip number 2 is only make one change at a time. The easiest way to get confused is to make 2 or 3 or more adjustments at the same time, because if your symptom only gets a little bit better, or if it stays the same, or if it gets worse, how are you going to know which change is making it better or worse? You're going to keep chasing around or have to start all over again. And if you're wondering if your bike is running rich or lean, you should check out this video here. People seem to like it because I make some funny sounds, I guess. I'm Kelly Fager from MXHideout. Ride safe, have fun.